Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely fascinating, the messy, complex, and deeply human evolution of India's unified struggle for independence. We're going to be looking at the period starting from the 1920s, tracing how a massive, incredibly diverse population slowly began discovering their unity right in the fires of an anti-colonial movement.
Now here's a monumental question for you. How exactly do millions of diverse, oppressed people actually find a single voice? I mean, think about it. How does an entire subcontinent, made up of distinctly different groups, classes, and communities, each facing their own very specific daily struggles, unite under one single demand for freedom? What does freedom even mean when a middle-class lawyer's problems are entirely different from the day-to-day survival of a landless peasant?
To figure this out, we're going to trace the arc of an idea called Swaraj through 6 pivotal phases: the spark of satyagraha, repression and anger, the call for non-cooperation, the many faces of Swaraj, why the movement halts, and finally, the demand for full independence.
So let's jump right into Section 1, the spark of satyagraha.
To understand how this spark actually ignited, we really have to zoom out and look at the immense suffering caused by the First World War. It's like a giant puzzle, right? The war sent defense spending through the roof, and the common people, well, they paid the price through brand new income taxes and massive customs duties. I mean, between 1913 and 1918, prices literally doubled. On top of that, villages were being forced to supply soldiers for the colonial army, which, as you can imagine, sparked widespread, burning anger. And as if that whole shebang wasn't enough, crop failures and a devastating influenza epidemic swept through the country. The 1921 census recorded that 12 to 13 million people died, just an unimaginable scale of shared oppression.
Right into this landscape of total desperation steps Mahatma Gandhi. He returns to India from South Africa in January 1915, and he brings with him a totally novel method of mass agitation. He didn't just bring sympathy, He immediately took this method on the road, testing it across different communities. We see him inspiring peasants against oppressive plantation systems in Champaran, throwing his support behind cotton mill workers striking in Ahmedabad, and helping peasants dealing with terrible crop failures in Kedah.
Now, you might be wondering, what exactly was this method? Well, the crucial thing to understand here is that satyagraha wasn't just passive resistance, which is how it's kind of misunderstood today. Actually, it was an intensely active, nonviolent search for truth. The whole idea was this: if your cause is true and you're fighting against injustice, you simply don't need physical force to win. You fight by appealing directly to the oppressor's conscience, literally persuading them to see the truth.
Gandhi truly believed that this dharma, the supreme duty of nonviolence, could be the ultimate unifying weapon for India. He knew perfectly well that hundreds of millions of unarmed Indians could never match the British military might with weapons. But through the pure soul force of satyagraha, they could actually achieve victory without seeking vengeance or harboring any ill will whatsoever.
Which brings us to Section 2, repression and anger.
So, as this movement starts gaining incredible traction across the nation, the colonial government hits back hard. Emboldened by his early successes, Gandhi launches a nationwide satyagraha against the newly proposed Rowlatt Act of 1919. This was a wildly unjust law, hurriedly passed despite the united opposition of literally every Indian member in the Imperial Legislative Council. It basically handed the government sweeping powers to crush political activities and, shockingly, allowed them to lock up political prisoners without trial for up to 2 years, just no due process at all.
And you can see how this quickly spilled out onto the streets. Gandhi calls for a hartal, a massive nationwide strike on April 6th. Rallies are organized. Railway workshop workers walk out. Shops shut their doors. The British administration gets absolutely terrified that essential lines of communication, like the railways and telegraphs, are going to be cut off. So they decide to clamp down with extreme force.
This brutal clampdown leads directly to one of the darkest days in the nation's history, the infamous Jallianwala Bagh massacre on April 13th. General Dyer opens fire on a peaceful, enclosed crowd, killing hundreds. Following this tragedy, the government systematically tries to terrorize and humiliate the population. Dyer actually instituted these horrific crawling orders, physically forcing satyagrahis to rub their noses in the dirt and crawl down the streets. Dyer openly admitted his goal was to produce a moral effect, basically pure terror and awe.
Moving right along to Section 3, the call for non-cooperation. Realizing that these isolated, scattered protests were getting easily crushed, Gandhi knew the movement had to evolve. It had to get much, much broader.
Crucially, he understood that a truly nationwide movement meant Hindus and Muslims had to stand shoulder to shoulder. So he teams up with young Muslim leaders like Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali on the Khilafat issue to launch a massive, unified, non-cooperation campaign. And guys, this wasn't just a political move, it was an enormous economic boycott. To put this into perspective, in just a single year, between 1921 and 1922, the value of imported foreign cloth plummeted from 102 crore down to a mere 57 crore rupees. That is a massive financial hit.
Because you see, foreign cloth wasn't just fabric to the people. It was this very potent symbol of Western economic and cultural domination. Across towns all over the country, merchants flat out refused to trade in foreign goods. People eagerly took their imported garments and literally threw them into these massive, roaring bonfires. And the direct result of this sweeping boycott? The production of domestic Indian textile mills and handlooms completely surged.
Let's look at Section 4, Many Faces of Swaraj.
Now, as we zoom out to the countryside, the story gets incredibly nuanced. Everybody is responding to Gandhi's call, sure, but what freedom actually meant depended entirely on a person's specific daily hardships. The middle class boycotted institutions, though honestly, they eventually trickled back because Indian alternatives were just too slow to be built. For the peasants in Awadh, led by Baba Ramchandra, Swaraj meant freedom from insane rents and bagar, which was forced labor without pay. They went so far as organizing Nairobi bands to cut landlords off from basic services like barbers and washermen. Meanwhile, for the plantation workers in Assam, who were basically trapped by the draconian Inland Emigration Act of 1859, Swaraj just meant one simple thing: the freedom to leave the tea gardens and finally go home.
Trying to keep all these wildly different grievances united under a strict banner of absolute nonviolence, it was incredibly difficult. This deeply personal quote from Jawaharlal Nehru captures that exact tension perfectly. He talks about encountering these angry, oppressed peasants in Awadh who were just ready to erupt, and Nehru reflects on his own internal struggle to keep his cool and maintain that discipline of nonviolence. He admits, he needed the lesson just as much as they did.
And in some places, the core philosophy of satyagraha got entirely rewritten. Take the Gudam Hills of Andhra Pradesh, for example. Tribal groups there were absolutely enraged by colonial forest closures that were destroying their livelihoods. Their leader, Alluri Sitaram Raju, was a fascinating figure who claimed to have special astrological powers and even said he could survive bullet shots. Now, while he praised Gandhi and told his people to wear khadi, he firmly believed that India could only be liberated through force. So he ended up leading his followers in militant, armed guerrilla warfare.
Okay, Section 5, the movement halts.
This fundamental mismatch between the pure ideal of nonviolence and the chaotic, desperate reality on the ground eventually caused things to snap. In February 1922, in a place called Chauri Chaura in Gorakhpur, a peaceful demonstration at a bazaar suddenly escalated into a violent, fiery clash with the local police. When Mahatma Gandhi heard about this bloodshed, he made a highly controversial decision. He abruptly called off the entire non-cooperation movement.
This sudden halt essentially forced a period of deep internal reflection for the whole movement. Gandhi felt that the masses just weren't quite ready yet. He believed satyagrahis needed proper, rigorous training before they could handle mass struggles without things turning violent. At the same time, a lot of the Congress leaders were just flat out exhausted. Figures like C.R. Das and Motilal Nehru formed the Swaraj Party. They started arguing that it was time to pivot back to provincial council elections so they could oppose British policies from the inside.
And finally, Section 6, Demand for Full Independence.
As the 1920s drew to a close, a worldwide economic depression and some seriously tone-deaf policies from the British shifted the landscape all over again. The British government sent the Statutory Commission under Sir John Simon to look into constitutional changes, but, get this, they didn't include a single Indian member. Zero. Unsurprisingly, this sparked furious "Go Back Simon" protests all across the country. The viceroy at the time, Lord Irwin, tried to calm the waters with a really vague offer of future Dominion status, but by this point, that just wasn't going to cut it anymore. Frustrated and ready for action, under the presidency of a younger, more radical Jawaharlal Nehru at the December 1929 Lahore Congress, the nation officially upgraded its goal. They went from asking for simple self-rule to demanding Purna Swaraj, absolute, complete independence.
But of course, declaring independence at a political conference is one thing. Getting millions of people to actually fight for it is a whole different ballgame. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Purna Swaraj was a pretty abstract political concept. How on earth would Gandhi find a way to unite the wealthy industrialists in the city, the struggling peasant in Awadh, and the isolated plantation worker in Assam once more? What single, tangible symbol of everyday survival could possibly ignite the next great phase of civil disobedience? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to stay curious.